is email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to part two of my conversation with Dr. Franklin Chang-Diaz, founder and CEO of Astra Rocket Company and a member of the NASA Astronaut Hall of Fame. We pick up our discussion with Dr. Chang-Diaz explaining his company's VASIMR engine, which he first began developing as a grad student at MIT. We start things off as simply as possible. What does the acronym VASIMR stand for?
VASIMR, Variable Specific Impulse Magnetoplasma Rocket.
Engineers got to love that.
A real mouthful. But it kind of explains what, the acronym explains what it is. It's essentially a magnetic pipe where you can place and heat a plasma. And we heat this plasma with electromagnetic waves. That is, we don't touch it with anything. We just launch these waves with very carefully positioned antennas. And pretty much the same way you heat, your coffee in a microwave oven. You just essentially launch these waves, and these waves are absorbed by the plasma, and the plasma gets very hot. So the key here is that you need to be able to contain this plasma and prevent it from, touching the walls of the rocket tube or the rocket casing. And that, is a feat of engineering that we are in the midst of working through. There's a lot of materials issues, a lot of management of heat, a lot of management of thermal conditions, and the magnetic field that is required to make that magnetic pipe is a very strong magnetic field produced by a superconducting magnet. And the superconducting magnet is extremely cold, as you can imagine. So it's a real interesting contrast. A rocket whose core is extremely hot, held together by a magnetic field created by a magnet, which is extremely cold. So, those two bedfellows have to be able to coexist in close proximity and not bother each other, and that is the challenge of the engineering that we are endeavoring to undertake.
And I think I read you guys have done some pretty significant tests already. I think 100 kilowatts or something. And I didn't know about. There's levels like 5, 6 you have to meet, and right now you're at level 5 or level 6, and the next level is viability.
Right, that's right. This is the levels that you mentioned are technology readiness level. And this is a metric that NASA uses to determine, when a technology is ready to be ready to fly. Typically, when you get to level 6, we are basically ready to fly, to do a demonstration in space. We are at level 4, between 4 and 5, closer to 5, but we still have a few pieces that are still at 4. And our goal is to go to level 6. It'll take us a couple of years with good funding to get us to level 6. And then we want to fly. We want to demonstrate the technology in space, make sure that the performance of the engine is as we predict and as we see it in the vacuum chamber here in our laboratory. And once that's done, then we have a product that we can sell, commercialize, and we'll put it under every hood available. Well, we basically enabling trucks. Oftentimes I say that we're building the diesel engine of space. It's going to power all the trucks.
Right.
In space.
Right. Now, you mentioned funding. Is it privately funded or is it publicly funded? How does it work?
It's a private company. It's privately funded, and of course we try to get also non-dilutive contracts from the government, from NASA, from other government entities. So we generate some revenue, but not enough to totally sustain the company. So we have to have investments.
Right.
So we balance both of them to give us enough enough greenbacks to get this thing ready to fly, and then we'll give it a try, and hopefully we'll have a business.
It's a fascinating one for sure. Now, you mentioned that you're probably a few years away still, and you also mentioned the analogy of wanting to be the diesel engine for the stars, basically, right? You want to put it under every hood. So how do you see the challenges that you see? Are they fixed, or are they solvable in the next decade, do you think?
Yes, and in fact, the way we present this is that the difficult part is behind us. The expensive part is in front of us. That's kind of the way we see it. We've solved the basic issues of the physics, the unknowns in the physics of the engine, and now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the engineering of the components, the materials, the various configurations. These are difficult problems, but they're not anywhere near as difficult as the ones we already overcome. So, but they are very expensive, because now we're talking about building something that has to fly, and those components are usually a lot more expensive than the ones that you just go buy at Home Depot or at the local hardware store. You have to test those first and make sure that your system actually works the way you predict. But then you have to build it such that it can fly.
Right. Yeah, you want it to work. That's for sure. I don't see spaceships at Home Depot. That's an interesting one. So, what advice do you have for aspiring leaders who are looking to build successful teams and achieve? I mean, the goal you're striving for is it's literally the stars. And so, what advice do you have?
Well, you have to have a goal. You have to have an end goal, but not be so fixated into just that one goal. You have to be willing to adapt, change, alter your course, modify your procedures. I have always felt that it's better to have small advances, but very frequently, rather than large, leaps of achievement in that are very rare. So small advances are easier to manage, and you learn a lot quicker that way. And then the next advance is already has the lessons learned from the previous one. So so it's a collection of small steps, to me, the best approach, rather than a large, leap that could be a failure and would set you back for a long time. So that's a piece of advice that I tell people is important.
I think that's also important for people, right? Because people get to see they get the win, as opposed to putting all this effort in for something that takes so long to make that big step change. At least now, as a team member, I see the victory, and it inspires me to keep working hard.
Yes, and also gives you less fear of failure, because you can afford to have a small fall or a small failure, and then you can recover from that, and then pick up your things and keep going. Change, obviously, you have to change, you have to modify, but with that recipe, you also need to be spring-loaded to fail, and be okay with failure, because that's how you learn.
Right. Now, what you're doing is already cutting edge. I'm just curious: are there any upcoming projects you're particularly excited about?
Well, we're trying to work the space transportation paradigm shift, but we're also interested in what's going on our planet Earth. And our company has also taken a little bit of a pivot in the area of renewable energy. We have been very focused on the production of green hydrogen in our subsidiary in Costa Rica, my home country. I became enamored with fuel cells, electric generation with hydrogen fuel cells when I flew on the space shuttle, because the space shuttle was an electric vehicle that generated all of its electricity with hydrogen and oxygen fuel cells. And we also generated all the water that we needed to drink. And I just think that that's a perfect technology for this planet that is now being so contaminated and polluted by the burning of fossil fuels. And also, hydrogen oxygen fuel cells would probably be used in space again, on the moon, on Mars, and various other places. So I see a complete connection between those two technologies, one applying to Earth and another one applying to space.
Well, full disclosure, I am an EV driver and I love them, but I do think that you're on the right track. I think that even with electric vehicles, because of the lithium and the nickel and all the things you need for the batteries, there are issues there as well that you don't have with the hydrogen.
Right.
And is it Honda? Is it Honda that has what? Toyota? Somebody I read recently has one.
Yeah, Toyota. In fact, the car I drive in Costa Rica is a Mirai. It's a Toyota Mirai. It's a fuel cell electric vehicle, and of course I fill it up myself with hydrogen that I produce with a solar farm, and it's all completely clean, no carbon involved. But I think the important niche for fuel cells and hydrogen is in the heavy transportation. Not so much in cars. I think the battery cars are really a good option. But for trucks and trains and ships, airplanes, I think now we're talking more hydrogen.
I see GM is coming out with a Hummer electric vehicle. You might need one for that one. That's got to be a pretty heavy vehicle. Yeah. I think I read you had to build your own hydrogen station because they didn't exist, right? So you were just mentioning that.
We have the only working hydrogen, renewable, fully green hydrogen station in probably all of Latin America that I know of. Certainly the only one in Central America.
Love engineers who solve their own problems. It's awesome. So how do you collaborate with other industry partners, research institutions, government agencies to advance your propulsion system and renewable energy?
Well, it's very important to recognize that you cannot do it all yourself. There's technologies in the VASIMR that we don't develop ourselves. We're working with a company in Canada that has done tremendous work. The name is Astra. They develop radio frequency generators, radio frequency amplifiers and components using solid state technology, extremely advanced capabilities. And so we've been working with them, and so that's one. And in the superconducting magnet, we also don't build it ourselves. We have to rely on other companies to bring those technologies to bear. And then there are many others. And eventually when we go into nuclear power, obviously we're not going to be building nuclear reactors either. And neither will we be doing the power conversion system for the nuclear to electric conversion. So other companies will play in. So we would like to see a teamwork, a really strong team. Everybody has expertise that can bring to the table to solve a problem that will help humanity really go out into space and populate space the way it should be.
Now, this is a stupid question, so I apologize in advance, but when you talk about nuclear reactors, you were still talking fission, or you think fusion?
Fission reactors for now. That is, someday we will know how to do fusion. Fusion is still, in my opinion, still quite a ways away. But when we do learn to do fusion, then the VASIMR engine will be adaptable to a fusion rocket, because the plasma itself could be dense enough and hot enough to trigger a fusion reaction when we learn to do it. We don't know how to do that yet. But for now, we'll just feed in electricity from a fission reactor, and that would be just fine. When we have fusion, then we might even think about going out of the solar system.
And until then, you'll borrow the magnets they're using on the fusion system.
Exactly.
All right, as I wrap up, I have 3 questions that I like to ask everybody. So, are there any leadership principles that speak to you personally and guide your day-to-day behaviors?
Yes, I mean, I think that you have to lead from the trenches. I mean, you don't really want to be up in your corner office dictating procedures and protocols, and never be out learning how the real people who are making your company successful, how are they seeing and living the moment. So you have to be there. You have to lead by example. You have to be humble, and you have to be kind to others, and recognize that people don't just live in your company. I mean, they have families. They have to deal with day-to-day life outside of the company. So you have to be tuned into that, and many others.
I like the way you think, because I think there are a lot of high-tech companies that don't think that way. You can read about them every day. So it's refreshing to hear that. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I give the same advice that I was given a long time ago. That is that no one gets anywhere without someone else's help. And to me, that has been the guiding light, I guess I would say, in that when you have to help others, eventually others will help you. But I mean, that's how things happen. You never get anywhere without someone helping you along the way. And I certainly had my dose of helping hands that came to help me throughout all these years.
I think back even to your jump from Costa Rica to the U.S., right? Your dad took out a loan to help move you, and then you live with cousins, and
yes,
of course, and you earned it on your way. After that, you got a full ride to Yukon, but obviously you had help along the way.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. Yeah.
What's the best book or article you read recently, and what was the key takeaway?
Well, I haven't finished the reading, but I'm reading Admiral William McRaven's book, The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. It's a small book full of leadership wisdom. And I have picked up a few things that are kind of really interesting from his leadership skills. He was a Navy SEAL, and I recommend the book. It's very well written, very easy to read, and fairly quick. It's a quick read. It's nice.
I'll have to add that to my list. I'm a former Navy guy myself. I was on one of the last conventional aircraft carriers, non-nuclear, was USS America. So I'll have to read that. And The Wisdom of the Bullfrog, you said?
The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. That's right.
All right. I'll add that to my list. Well, Dr. Chang-Diaz, this has truly been an honor. I've learned so much. Thank you so much for the conversation.
My pleasure. Good luck to you.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation. To find out more about Clint, go to clintonmpaget.com and pick up Clint's book, How Teams Triumph, Managing by Commitment, at Amazon. The Conversation with Clinton M. Paget is a production of Forbes Books.